Hey guys, it's Ashley, and please ignore the marks on my neck. I just filmed a book haul and all of the books were like choking me, so that's where these came from. In today's video, I am going to be talking about The Last Magician and the Devil's Thief by Lisa Maxwell. Yes, I am finally making a review. You guys can stop hearing me rave about them in all of my other videos and just come here for all your one-stop shopping needs. This is gonna be like a double review of both the books in the series so far, so we will just see what I remember and go from there. I have no notes written out for this. It's just all gonna be from my brain. So let's get started. If you don't know anything about The Last Magician, in essence, it's basically a historical fiction / fantasy book. We are set in 1902 New York, and there is a sort of magic system that's underlying everything in this world. We follow this girl, Esta, who is actually in present day New York, but who has the ability to travel back in time and to stop time. And so she goes back in time to try to stop somebody from destroying something that is needed in the future to end this like rule over magic that is happening. It's kind of complicated to understand. There's this thing called the Order that is kind of clamping down on magic and hates magic users and wants them to die. Esther goes back in time to get a place on this magical heist to get inside of the operation to stop them from doing the thing that's going to help them in the future. It's so good, and it makes so much more sense when you start reading the book. I easily gave both of these books 5 stars. If you haven't heard about it yet, here with me, if I haven't talked to you about it yet, 5 stars, highly recommend. Please go read them. Like I mentioned in my fall reading video, they are third-person multi-perspective, so we follow many different people along the way. If you're not into that, it might be a little confusing, but I still highly recommend picking it up. It's just such a good story. So that's gonna be it for non-spoilery things. From here on out, I'm just gonna be talking about the book, so if you have not read this series yet, go read it and come back when you have. It's so good. You will not be disappointed. Bye, non-spoilery people. I don't know how long this talk is gonna be, so I'm just gonna keep going on and on and on until I run out of things to say. So when I first started reading this book, I was super confused as to what was happening. There was a first scene with the magician, who ends up being Hart, throwing himself over the bridge with the book. Then you have that scene with Dolph where he tries to save Lena, but Lena dies. And then we get to Esta. So you've got all of these things that don't make any sense so far, and then you get to your main character. I love Esta. I really love her. The one thing that I can't stand about her though is how impulsive she is. And yes, that is like her one weakness in the book, so it makes sense that I wouldn't like that, but she's just so dang impulsive all the time. She travels back to 1902, and I really liked the historical side of this book. I think Lisa Maxwell did a really good job like getting you in that setting and making you feel like you're a part of it, but I was never too overwhelmed by the fantasy nor too overwhelmed by the historical fiction to like feel it was one or the other. It was definitely like a really good balance of both, which I really loved. But back to Esta though. So Esta's like a real kick-ass girl, but she's just so impulsive sometimes that it just like it makes me mad. So for example, there's a part in the book, if I'm remembering correctly, where Hart and Esta are up on stage and they like have something planned so that they can trick Jack and get him in, you know, so he'll start talking and whatever, and it's like with the glass coffin, and Esta like does something and spins it so that she's like, instead of coming out of the coffin, she like comes out, but then she changes outfits and she like does something, and Hart gets really pissed at her. That part is like a good example of her impulsivity, because she could have easily shown everybody who they were and like that they were Magus. That's the one thing that aggravated me about her, but everything else about her was so kick-ass. Like, yes, she had been training for this her whole life, but at the same time, like, she's handling it so well. Like 1902 New York, she's just going for it. Also, something else that I liked is that, you know, this is 1902, so women don't have voting rights. Women barely have really any rights whatsoever. So it's very male dominated, yet Esta so holds her own, and I love it so much. We're gonna take a break from Esta and start talking about Hart Darrigan. I love Hart so much, and I was so waiting for a moment where they would just like break down these walls and get together, and that didn't happen, but I'm willing to wait for them. I'm willing to wait for the right time, because I love Hart and Esta together too much to not be willing to wait, to be too impatient to not wait for that. Okay, the thing that really reminded me of Six of Crows was Dolph's like gang. Like he's getting people together for this heist, which is basically Six of Crows, which I really, really loved. But this like took it in another direction, because Dolph is, I feel like he's very different from Kaz, but he's also very similar. Dolph I liked, but I wasn't crazy about. Nibsy I freaking hated, and we'll get back to him in a moment. Viola I loved. Oh my god, I thought Viola was so great, and she's so good in the second book. I love the role that she's playing. And Jinyu, if that's how you say his name, that's how I've been pronouncing it, but he's great too. And the one thing that I have to say that's maybe kind of negative about this book is that they didn't get as much of a focus as I had wanted them to. I felt like as main components to this heist, they would have gotten a little bit more focus and a little bit more point of view chapters, but they didn't. But that was definitely made up for in the second book, which I'll go into in a moment, because the second book was like, bam, like so good. I hated Jack. Jack could go die, and I still hate Jack with a passion. Let's talk about Nibsy for a minute. Nibsy Lorcan, or Professor whatever Lachlan, is that his name? Professor Lachlan? I have a few choice words that I would say to Nibsy in real life that I'm not going to bear repeating here. He has the power to like see into the future, but not really see into the future so much as see all of the possibilities that different outcomes or different events can have an outcome for, and choose the one that would most suit him, and he's able to like play the people around him in order to satisfy that. Dolph and Lena had Esta, which was like a mind-blowing thing in and of itself. So they had Esta, but then Lena told Nibsy to keep her safe, but then Nibsy sent her in time knowing that she would come back to him at some point, and it took like 50 years, and then she came back, or no, 100 years. Yeah, Nibsy's like 110 or something, 120, something crazy. But because he has the healer, Dakari, he's been able to stay young. Still so messed up by that. And then the whole thing is that Nibsy wanted Esta to go back in time to get the book, to come back to him so that he could end up ruling over all the magic by using the book to bind Esta, who can control time. So she's basically the ether to the objects, and he was gonna control magic. I don't know, something like that. So messed up. Everything about that was so messed up. I can't like explain to you how much I liked this book. I want to reread it right now. I really do. On to the next one, I suppose. We end book one on a cliffhanger. We find out things we really don't want to know, and we don't know what happens to a certain character. I'm not gonna name names just in case you haven't read the first book and you've skipped to this part of the video to hear what I have to say about the sequel. If you have read the first book, you know what I'm talking about. Going into this book, I was so eager to find out what happened. I was like flipping through the pages as they were coming. It was crazy. I read this so fast that it was like a whirlwind of things happening, and I only remember like really key details. There's so many things that happen in this book, so many twists and turns from the first book that made this book so unique in and of itself that I loved it. I don't know which one I loved more. I love The Last Magician, but I also love the second book. Like, there's no second book slump for the series. The second book was so good. The one thing that I have an issue with this book, yet I still gave it 5 stars because it didn't really bother me because I understood, but the one thing that I had an issue with was Hart at points was very possessive of Esta. There's a reason for that though, and it didn't take away from what I thought of the book, because there's a reason that he's acting that way, and it's not what you think it is. It was just every point of view that was Hart's mentioned this, and it kind of got to me after a while. I was like, okay, I get it. He's very possessive of her. When are they gonna finally kiss? It was not so much like the fact that he was possessive, but more so the fact that he was constantly thinking these things and wanting to do these things and couldn't do these things, and it was pissing me off because I wanted them to do these things. I wanted them together. Let me just get into some of the things that I thought about this book for real. So if you haven't read this one yet, then click away because we're gonna go into some spoilers now. The very first thing that I want to mention when it comes to this book is the fact that they time traveled to 1904. That's like the main plot point of this book, and I loved it. They're on the train and Jack is assaulting them, and Esta just completely panics and uses her time traveling abilities and puts them in the future to 1904, and all of this shit happens because of it. Also, I love St. Louis. This one takes place in St. Louis versus New York, and I loved it. Viola and Jinyu got a really big part in this. Well, not as big as Esta and Hart, obviously, because they are the main characters, but Viola and Jinyu really got a bigger part and played a bigger role in things versus the last book, which I really enjoyed. We got introduced to new characters. We had North, Ruth, we also got Ruby and Theo. Oh my god, that storyline with Viola and Ruby and Theo, I can't, there's so much sexual tension there. Let's just talk about like the end. Let's talk about the end for a minute. I thought that after all this time of running and hiding and attacking and doing all of this stuff for these stupid artifacts, that Nibsy would be one step behind. I thought. Maybe that was a stupid thought because he can see into the future, but I thought that it was a possibility. That moment when they were on the train and Esta and Hart and North and whatever, Maggie, is that her name? I can't remember. They're on the train and Hart disappears because he knows that the book inside of him is like not gonna leave him alone, or like wants Esta or something. And then we find out that Nibsy is working with North. Is that what it is? I don't know if they ever actually reveal that to us, but he's working with one of them, North or Maggie or both. And I just like, Nibsy, when are you going to die? Oh my god, this boy, like, I hate him. I hate him with a burning passion. Oh, let's talk about Logan for a minute. That moment where Esta and Logan transport back to 1902 in the beginning, and then Esta goes even further back in time to get back to Hart, and then it's like, okay, Logan's gonna show up in a week. You need to be there to get him before he gets to Nibsy. And then he gets to Nibsy and Nibsy doesn't even believe him about himself. I just don't like anybody but Esta, Hart, Viola, and Jinyu. And it sucks because every time you get introduced to a character, you're like, oh, maybe I'll like this person. And then, psych, they're working for Nibsy. Or, psych, they're just bad people in general. Like Logan. Logan seemed like a decent guy in the first book. Like, yes, he still seems like an asshole, but he was like not horrible. He wasn't trying to rule the world. And he's just like so attached to Nibsy and to Professor Lachlan that like he's willing to just he's just being brainwashed. That's what it is. He's just been so brainwashed by Nibsy that he can't think for himself anymore, which sucks because I really liked Logan. Not really, but I could believe that I did. I want to talk for a minute about the events that happened because they traveled forward in time. Like the fact that Jack got a hold of the book, which sucks. He got control of that. He became like the president's right-hand man almost. Like Jack's doing like so well in this future world that he got the book in. And then Esta became the devil's thief. Esta is well known in the future for destroying a train. I love that so much. I'm like trying to think of anything else that I want to add. I think the last thing that I want to mention is Hart and what is going to happen to him in the future. I'm honestly not sure. The whole thing with the book really confused me. He has the power to control people's minds, to read their minds. So when he touched the book, his power was open, and he brought the book inside of him, which is why he can't really go near Esta because the book wants Esta, because Esta is the ether that's going to allow the book to do something or other. I don't know. But that's why he can't get near Esta and why he's so possessive over her. But I mean, he also wants Esta, so it's like a combination of both. Anyways, though. But the thing that really confused me was like what happened in the book. So there was like a guy named Thoth, and there was a girl, demon or something. I can't even remember what her name was. And they were like fighting and there was something happening and I was just so confused by the whole thing. I'm like, what does this have to do with the story? I thought Isaac Newton made this book. Like, what? You've got like the story with Isaac Newton and then the story with like the demon and the librarian and the whatever, and I don't know where they fall in between each other. Maybe I was just reading this book so quickly that I just didn't catch it. So maybe I need to reread this and see what I missed. So I'll definitely have to reread this and get back to that unless one of you guys can tell me what happened with that. Anyways though, I think that's all that I wanted to mention for both of these books. I really thoroughly enjoyed this series, and I, like I said a million times, highly recommend for you guys to pick it up if you haven't already. The Last Magician was sitting on my shelf for a really long time before I finally picked it up, and I'm just so glad that I did because it's so good. I'll leave links to these books down below for you guys if you are interested in checking them out or reading more about them. I can't say anything better about these books. They're so good. So if you all have read The Last Magician or have even read The Devil's Thief, please let me know what you thought, if you agree or disagree or have any theories about what's gonna happen in the next book. But that is going to be everything for this video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you later. Goodbye!